afternoon, good evening. How's everyone doing today? And I know everyone is muted, so you might not be able to respond, but I want to welcome you to our program. Thank you so much for joining us. And I know it's really early for people in the West Coast, and for everyone else, thank you so much for joining us. It is going to be such a blessed event as we discuss this important issue on the anti-violence against women. And just to give you a brief introduction of myself, my name is Tinashe Mukasa. Caroline is my middle name, and I am honored to be the host to moderate, facilitate this event. We have a vast array of high caliber women and men, very intelligent, who are going to be sharing their insight on this important issue when it comes to this violence against women. Let me just give you a quick disclaimer. Although violence is not only against women, it can also be against men as well, and any persons who identify of a different gender. It's just that for this program, for today, for this particular hour that or 3 hours that we're going to be talking about this, we will be focusing on women. I appreciate your questions. I ask that you pay attention to what our speakers will be talking about. Pay attention to the works that they have done, the research that they have done, and organizations that they are part of. And as a person, think of how you as a person or as an organization can also participate in helping eradicate this issue when it comes to violence against women. Now, I will go over a couple of housekeeping rules or pointers, if you may. Now, the first thing I'm going to ask is for all my speakers, for my lovely speakers, please make sure your phone is on mute. If you can, turn it off. We wouldn't want to hear a phone ringing whilst you are presenting, but if it does in any case, don't worry, it's a mistake that we all can go through. But if you can, please have that phone muted, silenced, on vibration. And also for anyone else in this platform who's listening in, just make sure you stay on mute. Me and other co-hosts will try to make sure everybody is muted. This is just virtual meeting etiquette, and it's just a matter of respecting everybody, all right? And also want to remind you, smile. I know it's early for some of us. We don't usually, well, some of us don't usually wake up this early on a Sunday, but just smile. Let's have some fun, but let's also remember that this is an important topic. We are discussing a problem, yes. We are trying to come up with solutions, yes. But what type of action can you get from all this? What can you go ahead and do for your community, which will then end up helping a nation, which will end up helping the world as a whole? We might not be able to solve the issue today, but this is a starting point, yes? Perfect. Now, let me explain what African Views is, because it's the African Views organization that is hosting and sponsoring this program that we're doing today. And I will go over what the mission is for this. Now, for African Views, its primary mission is to identify, analyze, and publicize interdependent cultural gaps and their root causes. And they have a secondary mission to advocate, coordinate, and facilitate improvement of social and economic integral ties that are facing historical, immediate, and future challenges due to racial, ethnic, systemic, traditional, gender, or intergenerational conflict, which ties into what we are going to be discussing today. It is intergenerational, it is gender biased, very systemic, ethnic in some parts of the world, and also can be racial. The African Views tertiary mission is to promote truth and reconciliation, rapprochement, congruence, and global partnership for advancement in the humanities. So this is what we are going to be focusing today, as we are identifying what the issue is, We're identifying how this has affected so many persons, no matter what gender. Also considering the fact that March is a celebrated women for women. So just putting focus on them, although it doesn't mean that we only focus on women during the month of March. We are, after all, the bearer of this ad. We are the motherland. We are the ones who bring life to this world, if you may. And just talking about violence against women is a very sensitive topic because of some of the stories that you hear in the news or that you see firsthand, or maybe that you have experienced firsthand. Now, I have a lineup of wonderful speakers, as I said before, and just to give you a basis on how the program is going to run. Just to give you a basis on how the program is going to run, each speaker has been allocated a certain time, which is about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on who the speaker is and what sort of presentation they have. After each speaker, we will have a Q&A, questions and answers. Please do ask your questions in the chat, and me and my co-host will look at the questions in the chat. We will repeat some of them just for so that everybody can hear what the question is. If you prefer to ask your question verbally, please do let us know. Feel free to send me a message directly, as you can see. If you take a look at the participants in this, my name is Tinashe. You can send me a message directly. I will forward that to our co-host, and then we will go ahead and repeat your question. Question and answer time is 5 minutes. We are going to be respectful of everybody's time, because everyone is taking time out of their day on a Sunday to be part of this program. So let's respect everybody's time. All right, I hope there are no questions so far, and I hope everything is clear. And we are going to get started with the program. Anything that you have a question of, feel free to put it in the chat, anything that's not clear. And again, I am going to repeat this. Please make sure you are on mute. It is etiquette and it is respect for all our speakers and also for everyone that is listening into our program. All right, we are going to go straight into our first speaker. I'm going to go ahead and begin this. Now, for the first portion of our discussion, we are going to be discussing why gender-sensitive legislature matters. What are the challenges and solutions? In this first portion, which is going to run from this time until around 10:25 a.m., I have a couple of speakers that are going to be talking, and they will put their focus on that question. I will repeat it. Why gender-sensitive legislature matters. What are the challenges and solutions? Ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker is Dr. Murthy. And Dr. Murthy, she is an award-winning public health professional, professor, and author. She serves as the Global Health Lead American Medical Women's Association, and as a board trustee, African Views Organization. She is part of our organization as well. She has also been practicing medicine and public health for the past 30 years in various countries, and is currently a professor at New York Medical College School of Health Sciences and Practice. She's a winner of the Elizabeth Blackwell Award, International Health Section, American Public Health Association. Dr. Murthy, are you here with us today?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. Thank you, everybody. Greetings from New York. And thank you for getting us off to a great, energetic start. And at first, I would like to give a big shout out to Wale, whose mission, he lives and breathes this. I don't think he ever sleeps. So Wale, thank you so much for everything you're doing. And I hope you find the strength and the resources to make AV go up to the pinnacle. So thank you so much. You asked a very important question, or rather you set off a very important discussion. Now, it pains me to say that like the corona, the pandemic of racism and violence against women is raging in the country, is raging internationally. And for those of us in the United States, we've just been reeling from Black Lives Matter, but now the slaughtering of Asian women, I want to bring that up here because it's Asian women who were targeted. We're talking about this on the heels of CSW. And as you so rightly said, Madam Moderator, it's Women's History Month. But hello, we don't make women history by killing them. We make them a part of history by honoring them, by listening to them and working with them. This is not a competition. It's not male versus female, ladies and gentlemen. We need to work together. Unfortunately, it's very sad to say that the prevalence of violence is more against women. I'm not saying there's no violence against men, as you said that in your opening remarks, but it's more against women. So now, fast forward, why do we need legislation? We need to have legislation which incorporates gender written into the fabric, just not saying, oh, these rules are for men, these rules are for women. I hope, you know, I'm the mother of a daughter, and in the future, if I ever have grandchildren, I hope it's a thing of past when they don't think about, oh, did this happen to you, mom, or did this happen to anybody because they were women. I think this is something we really need to look at. So that's why it's so important. So how do? We do that by having forums like these, discussions like these, and then by reaching out to our legislators. And a big shout out to AV, especially Wally and Bill, our chairmen, who have been instrumental in working on the Violence Act, the AVAWA Act, which Wally has been made it his life's mission and has been, reaching out to people, drawing in people together. I think I am very proud to say that in the United States, again, not to shift the focus, that we had Madam Vice President Kamala Harris kick off by giving eloquent opening remarks during the Commission on Status of Women as the head of the US delegation. This is the first time in the history in 65 years that we've had such a high level ranking person speak about this from the US government, and more so it is a woman, and a woman who looks like all of us here because she's a woman with 2 X chromosomes. So coming to the biology of it, yes, we have gender specific differences, but we need to have legislation that there needs to be accountability. Now, this man who shot and killed these women, 6 of them who died were women. So why did you target women? What is the protection women have? Like globally, if a woman goes and says, I am being accused, in some countries in the world, as you're aware, a victim of a rape, if she goes to complain about it, she is again asked to prove it, and oftentimes maybe even raped again by the authorities to whom she goes to complain. So instead of showing compassion, why are we subjecting them to so much more of a burden to prove the aggression against them? And this aggression, Madam Moderator and other attendees, is just not macro aggression, it's micro aggression. How many of us have been passed over for our male colleagues to get promotions? Many places in the world, including the US, we do not get the same pay as males. And can I request somebody to mute themselves, please, Madam Moderator? It's a little disconcerting to speak when there's a background noise. I'm just going to pause for a moment. Thank you.
It's been muted. You can go ahead.
Thank you so much. So I think one of the things is why legislation, and this is just not at the national level, international level, not what UN Women says, not, you know, and as we all know, the UN agencies are not legal bodies. They only make recommendations. I always tell my students that they go like, yeah, what is the UN doing? The UN is doing things by working with NGOs like us, with academia, and also with think tanks, with the foundations, but it cannot be done alone. Legislation needs to start at the local level in schools. For example, the same treatment, immunization. We know that girls are not immunized in so many parts of the world the same as boys. That is gender. So when you opened up the floor by asking about gender legislation, it's just not protection against physical violence, but against abuse, against neglect, against even passing women over, girls. So it needs to start at a very young age, and it needs to be practical. It's just not written in books for somebody to dust this off or have it on a website, but what can we do actually? For that, we need to have accountability. And Dr. Amartya Sen, in his brilliant article, 100 million women are missing, clearly outlined that so many women don't even come because they're aborted because of sex selective abortion. The reason I bring this up is there needs to be protection for the fetus and for the woman, because she's carrying a fetus and not being subjected to abuse. So wrapping up in the next minute, and I think I'm sticking to time, not going over time, is we need to make sure how can we come together. Like sometimes, as we all know, the pen is mightier than the sword. Write about it, talk about it, have podiums like this, not to show women as sex objects, but to show women as equal partners who hold up more than half the sky, not only as productive members of society, but as you said, people who give life to others. Because a mother, that's why she's a mother. And a woman is a nurturer. Not that men are not, but it is the role. So we need to embrace the differences, both the biological and the physiological differences, but make sure there's equity when any kind of legislation at all levels is written, is enacted, is practiced. And the same thing, even I'm just going to wrap up by talking about vaccines, the COVID vaccine. And I coined a term. I was on another meeting 3 weeks ago, and I coined the term vacuity. That is vaccine equity. We need to have equity in access to vaccine, in distribution, and so many of our female healthcare providers, this is not my bias being a healthcare provider, do not have access to the PPE they need to take care of the patients. The men have more of an access. So I'm going to just stop now by saying we need to think, we need to re-examine, but we can make a difference. And thank you so much, Madam Moderator, for this opportunity. And thank you, Wally. You're really a rock star for AV as you carry us all along. And we need more men like you to believe in the work what women do, because together we can make a difference. And after all, in the spelling of a woman is a man, W-O-M-A-N. So the M-A-N is a man. Thank you so much.
Excuse me. Thank you so much, Dr. Muti. And such a wonderful presentation, and you honing down on those points in a short period of time. You said a lot of important information that we are all aware of, but for some reason, not really acted on. I have a follow-up question for you. You mentioned that in the legislature that we need to hone down on the education of the younger persons. I focus so much on the young generation with the work that I do, because that's the future generation in terms of mitigating the issue. If you had a chance of writing the first point in any legislation, what would your first point be in regards to mitigating this issue against violence when it comes to women? What would your first point be if you had a chance to do that?
Thank you so much for that question. I knew you would come to something like that. I didn't guess your question, but kind of guessed which direction you were going.
Right.
My first sentence, if I may, would be women matter, and they were working with women, you can build a healthier society. That's the thing. And to say that men are equal partners. See, this is the thing. Nobody, and that's why it's not, we need to focus on gender equality and gender harmony more than equality at this point to get legislation. It needs to be gender harmony where women and men work together to improve the lives of women, because it's like a ripple effect. It will be felt throughout. So my point would be working together, women matter, to improve life. So that it has to be teamwork. So it's teamwork. That's what I would say. Thank you. I hope I've answered your question.
Definitely have, and absolutely. And just to reiterate that this is all about working as a united world, nothing to do with race, nothing to do with ethnicity, nothing to do with gender. This issue affects us. It affects your mother, daughter, grandchildren, son. It affects everybody, directly or indirectly. Dr. Murthy, thank you so much for sharing that vital information. Now, do we have any questions? You're welcome. All right, so if there are any questions for Dr. Murthy, please feel free to post them in the chat. I don't see any questions so far in there, but if they're there, I will address them. Dr. Murthy, I will be referring to you if there are any questions that are in the chat. But thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your presence here.
Thank you again. I'll be around, so if you have anything, you can just put it in the tab. I'm just going to turn my camera off. And thank you again. And Wally, thank you again. And you know what? Just because everybody is saying, great, don't stop working. Bye. You cannot sleep.
Yes, absolutely. Lots of coffee, right? All right, so we are going to move on to our next speaker that we have on the schedule. And for our next speaker, I am going to be introducing Lady Terry. Now, with Lady Terry, she is going to be giving us a brief introduction of who our next speaker was. But let me just tell you a little bit more about Lady Terry. So with Lady Terry, she is one of our African Views Organization members, very insightful lady and social entrepreneur and a rights advocate who has worked extensively with for-profit and non-governmental organizations and developed and developing countries and underserved communities. She is a convener and founder of the CEDAW, which is the Committee for the Committee of Trinidad and Tobago, CC or TT. She's a member and director, like I said earlier, of our board for the African Views Organization. Lady Terry, how are you doing today?
Good morning, Tanashi. How are you? I am fine.
Absolutely great. I hope you had lots of coffee. And just to let you know, there's a lot that goes on in the background where we are sleeping at 2 a.m. planning this. So thank you so much for joining us, Lady Terry. I will let you have the platform.
Thank you, Tanashi, and thank you, Dr. Murthy. It was good to hear you and see you this morning. And welcome, everyone. It is my pleasure to join you from Trinidad and Tobago. And who would have been our first speaker on this relevant topic at the 65th session on the Commission of the Status of Women. We're talking under the theme of full and effective participation of women in public life, elimination of violence, and the implementation of gender equality. And during this session, African Views will examine the topic why gender-sensitive legislation matters. So my task this morning was to introduce Her Excellency Aja Fatimata Jallow-Tambajang, who is a woman with many distinctions. She served as Vice President of the Republic of Gambia through 2018 was the Minister of Health, Social Welfare, and Women's Affairs, a policy advisor on women to 3 consecutive successive presidents, and chairperson of the Republic of the Gambia National Women's Council. And these are just to name a few of her accomplishments. Her Excellency also played a pivotal role in establishing unprecedented coalition of 7 Gambian to independents and 4 civil society organizations that stabilized the country and ushered in a peaceful democratic transition of power in the Gambia. Prior to her transition into politics, Her Excellency had a distinguished career at the United Nations Development Program in Africa, working as a chief technical advisor in Gambia, as well as the UNDP advisor on gender, health, and population in Liberia. On a more personal note, I had the privilege of serving with Her Excellency on the Commonwealth Observation Mission of the 2019 Malawi general election. And I came away from that experience with a friend and a sister who I saw daily giving lessons in leadership as the vice chair of the mission, who navigated a diplomatically sensitive election process. And she did it effortlessly and inclusively. Her Excellency has did agree to make a contribution on the topic why women and girls are more vulnerable targets to violence. However, unfortunately, Her Excellency has an emergency in her family and is unable to join us this morning. So I bring her greetings, I bring her regrets, and in her stead, I will continue to have the discussion as we address CEDAW, the CEDAW committee, the CEDAW, the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Violence against Women, I'm sorry. So with that short, brief overview, I want to again extend my regrets on behalf of Her Excellency for not being here. She absolutely wanted to be here up to the very 2 o'clock this morning. She was sending me texts, but she unfortunately, like I said, has a medical emergency in her family and has to tend to that. So let me switch gears quickly and talk about the CEDAW and the CEDAW Committee of Trinidad and Tobago, which is a non-governmental organization that I represent. The CEDAW, as you know, was adopted at the UN in 1979, and we celebrated its 40th anniversary in 2019. It's also described as the International Bill of Rights for Women, and it exists in all parts of the world. We like to say, again, it's the Bill of Rights, but the real purpose of the CEDAW is to ensure that its principles, which are the principles of equality, non-discrimination, and state accountability, which are wrapped up in and represented in 17 substantive articles, which lays out really how a woman and girl should be appreciated and made an equal member of society for all member states represented in those 17 articles. So the purpose of the CEDAW and the purpose of our organization is to hold governments accountable, specifically our government, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, to ensure that the laws that are implemented, policies that are implemented in a gender-sensitive manner. So again, we hold these principles very close to our heart. It's the work that we do. We collaborate around the globe, collaborate locally, nationally, regionally, and globally to ensure that not only are these things happening in Trinidad and Tobago in a country-specific manner, but also that they are being implemented, and we are working with other organizations that are representative in other parts of the world to support each other initially. So we should be supporting each other as we do this work, because as Dr. Muti said, when you help a woman, you help the world. As Tinashe said in her introduction, we are the mothers, we are the ones that bring life into the world, and so bring forth life to the world. And so when you help a girl and you help a woman, you really help the world, you help society. So conversely, when you keep away or you diminish a woman, you're diminishing 50% of our society, or sometimes in some places even more than 50%. So we have to keep in mind in this month of the woman, having just celebrated the International Women's Day on the 8th of March, while we are entering the second week of the Commission on the Status of Women, or CSW, at the UN, which is being virtually celebrated globally. And just in our daily lives, we need to recognize the importance of the types of work that we do to continue to do this work, because the work is not done. Yes, there are laws and there are policies that are in place in some countries, but there are laws and policies that are also in place that negatively impact women and girls. And I would look again to my country and say, one of the things that we have done is to examine all of the laws that are on our books right now, and to identify those of which are discriminatory against women, bring those laws to the attention of the Attorney General, and work with him to remove those laws. Of course, that has to be taken to Parliament and it has to be agreed upon, but these are the kinds of systematic approaches that has to be taken. So it's more than just, it's not enough having a convention or a treaty that are in place. And of course, the CEDAW is one of 9 treaties, human rights treaties, I should say, that speaks to the rights of persons. But it's not enough for our governments to be signatories to these treaties, or to ratify these treaties so that it's something that's on the books. They then now have to implement laws that is either directly tied to their individual constitutions, or just laws that are in place in general to ensure that the rights of women are not just protected, but ensured in every single thing that we do, whether it's education, women who live in rural communities, women's sexual reproductive health and rights, women rights to participate in public and political life, women's ability to represent their country at the international level. All of these areas, unbelievably, in 2021, we still have to ensure that our countries allow for these things to happen on an equal basis. So it is up to us, it is up to all of us to ensure that these things are going on individually and collectively. So my organization, the organization that I represent, again, which is the CEDAW Committee of Trinidad and Tobago, it is our life's mission to work not only with each other, but to work across the board with our male allies, and we have many of them, locally as well as globally, such as representatives at the AV, like Wale, who has visited Trinidad and Tobago, and we're looking forward to him revisiting us again, to raise these issues, not on our behalf, but on everybody's behalf. These issues do not just affect women, these issues affect men as well. So we need to recognize, again, I'm pulling from Dr. Muti's comments, that this is not a woman's issue or a man's issue. It's a humanity issue, right? It's for all of us. And so we need to understand that it's not either or, it is for all of us. There's room for all of us. We were created equally, we ought to be treated equally. And that is not to say that everything a man does, a woman should do or can do. It's that we're not built the same, so clearly that's not the issue. But it's having access. If a woman wants to be able to do something, she should be allowed to do that. She should not even have to ask. It should be based on equality. She should be able to access what she needs. So from our perspective, in working with our governments, in working with our allies, both male and female, locally and internationally, we're moving these things forward. Laws on the books quickly that Trinidad and Tobago I can refer to. I would look at things like our Domestic Violence Act. We recently, less than 6 months ago, updated our Domestic Violence Act. And why would we do that? You would ask. We already have one in place. Why would we do that? Well, because as a world, we are constantly evolving. So the original act of 1979 did not address some of the things that's happening today. So it was imperative that we take a second look at that act of 1979 and ask the question, examine it. Is it really addressing women's rights today, girls' rights today? And those areas that it was not reaching far enough, the district attorney agreed that it was time to update that act, brought it to the parliament, and it was passed. So it's things like this. Our organization working closely with state duty bearers, working closely with allies to ensure that these things are addressed in a systematic way to eliminate inequality. There's much more work to be done, but we're all up to the challenge. And we ask that we get the opportunity to join hands with others around the world to work toward gender equality, gender harmony, and just respecting each other. And I will pause there, and I hope I'm staying to time. Thank you, Tanashi.
Thank you so much, Lady Terry. Do we have any questions for Lady Terry with what she just mentioned? She did mention a couple of things. She tapped into the law, she tapped into the treaty, she tapped into the acts. Any questions for Lady Terry? I'm not seeing any in the chat. If you have a question, please let me know. Lady Terry, I do have a direct question to you.
Sure.
Now, we have seen a couple of treaties, laws put into place, different acts put into place. With corruption, why is it that some of these acts, treaties, and laws are abused? If you had a chance to put in, I'm going to pose you the same question I posed to Dr. Mufti. If you had a chance to be part of making part of the legislature in terms of the treaties that are going to be put in place in the act, what would you suggest so that it reduces corruption and abuse of these acts that are put in the law?
Thanks for that question, Tanashi. I think I would start by emphasizing the value of each individual, the value that we all bring to the table. Women, men, boys, girls, we all individual, regardless of our status in life, regardless of our where we were born, where we live, we all equally have value to our development, to development of the globe. So I would say we must put that back into whatever we do. When we value ourselves and we value each other, the need to be corrupt will be diminished. Why would you steal from yourself? Why would you steal from your brother or your sister? If you value yourself, you wouldn't think of stealing, and being corrupt is really stealing. So for me, I will start there. I would start talking about value, how we value each other, how we value ourselves, and how we value the world going forward.
Absolutely, Lady Terry. It's all about morals. And remember, well, I'm all about karma. Something that you do to somebody else, whether it's bad or negative, is going to reflect on you. And that's with what you're going about with value, that let's just value each other in terms of the rights that we have, whether you're a man or a woman. Let's just value each other. And this is something that will help, hopefully, to mitigate this issue on violence against women. Thank you so much, Lady Terry.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. And again,
Absolutely.
Thank you to AV for having this forum, for creating this space for us to have these types of open, honest, open dialogue. And these are the types of things that needs to continue, not just in Women's Month or not just during CSW, but it should be ongoing. These should be conversations that we should be having all the time, and not just having the conversations about it, talking about solutions to address the issues, and then working together to implement those solutions so that we make changes effectively. Thank you so much.
No, absolutely. So I do have two questions that I see in the chat. I am going to repeat them, so you can choose to answer the question, individually, or if you want to answer them both. So we have a question. So what are the changes that are proposed in the VAW Act in TNT. So what are the changes that are proposed? Let's start with that.
Oh, right. So some of you're referring to the more recent changes. One of the first things that we did when we implemented the Domestic Violence Act, it was fairly generic, but we also implemented the issue of marital rape, which is something that many countries, even though they have a Domestic Violence Act, does not address marital rape. There are some people that have the position that there's no such thing as marital rape, which we take issue with, of course. So marital rape is one of the issues that we address. In the more recent update, we're looking at gender and how gender is referenced in the Domestic Violence Act, and we're talking about same-sex relationships, which again is taboo in many countries, and my country is no different to many, where it's not as progressive on subjects of same-sex relationships as maybe the United States. So that's an issue of addressing intimate partner violence. How is that addressed? Those things are addressed in the new act.
Perfect, thank you. And I hope that answers your question. Now, in addition to that, someone is asking, can you help define marital rape?
Thank you for that question.
Yes.
Marital rape is between, if you are married, even though you're married, and I'm paraphrasing here, so I'm not taking it directly from the act, I'm not looking at the act, but if two consenting adults are in a marriage and the woman or the man has determined in that moment that they do not want to engage in sexual relations with their partner in that moment, and they're forced to, that is marital rape. So it's just the same as rape outside of marriage, except it's with people who are married. Marital rape is no different to rape, except the persons are married. Forcing someone to do something against their will is wrong. Whether you're married to the person or not, it's wrong. And that is what marital rape addresses. Forcing your partner to have to be intimate when they don't want to. That's marital rape. And I'm paraphrasing. I would have to go back and look at the act and I can tell you exactly the wording that was used, but in a nutshell, that is marital rape. Right.
So what she's saying, so they something such as unconsented sex, whether you're married or not. There you go.
Absolutely, yes.
Exactly. So we do have another question in here, Lady Terry. Now, this question is about when we talk about violence, there's somebody who's asking, what about violence from women to women? I will also add that to men, because now we live in a world where you really can choose, you know, you can choose anything that makes you happy as a person. Yeah. So with this violence from women to women, she's asking, or he is asking, excuse me, this is Isaac, he is asking, how do you see these issues as well? So I'm taking it, Isaac, you're referring to the act itself. Is that something that's embedded in that?
So it's intimate partner violence it's just that. It's intimate partner, whether it's same sex or opposite sex. The law applies to everyone equally. So that if you are, for instance, in a same-sex relationship and you are being abused by your partner, the law provides for you to go to the police, make a report, just like a heterosexual couple. And the authorities are obligated to handle that situation exactly as if it were a heterosexual couple. There's no difference. So it's handled exactly the same way. There's no biases. There's no, well, there are two men or there are two women. There shouldn't be. Violence is violence. You're inflicting violence on the other person. And so once that is happening, the law applies across the board.
Perfect.
I hope that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. So the values are the same.
Yes,
What she's
absolutely.
saying, regardless of gender, regardless of your, with your sexual orientation, the values are the same. It's all about respecting each other. It's all about morals. Lady
And it's
Terry,
all
thank
about
you.
human rights. It's also rooted in human rights. We're all human beings and we ought to be treated that way.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you so much, Lady Terry. Thank you so much for answering those questions.
More than welcome.
It's you answering the questions ad hoc. Like I said, you feel free to chat in the questions. If I miss your question, I will make sure to repeat it at the end of the segment where we'll readdress that.
And I'm happy I'm here. I will continue to be here. I will mute myself. I'm happy to answer any questions going forward. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. All right, let's move on. We are going to move on to our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen. And one thing that I didn't mention, I'm going to take a pause here. We have something fun planned for everybody at the end of this program, and it's going to require everybody's vocals. Let me just say that. And we are all going to be singing. So just wanted to let you know that if you have a voice like mine that sounds like a frog sometimes, drink some water. But we have something fun planned for all of us at the end, just to mark the end of this activity, because we're now in this virtual world where we can only see each other on the screen, and hopefully we will be able to see each other in person. But we have something planned for you at the end of our program where we are going to exercise our vocals. All right, let's move on. Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Fiona Hukula. Dr. Fiona Hukula, she is a senior research fellow and Building Safer Communities program leader at the Papua New Guinea National Research Institute, PNG-NRI. She also, with a career policy and a social researcher with over 20 years experience, she has authored and co-authored various publications relating to crime, urban issues, and gender violence in PNG. She represents the PNG-NRI on high-level national committees, such as the Family and Sexual Violence Action Committee, that's FSVAC, and the National Action Plan Against Sorcery, Accusation, and Related Violence, NAPSARV, that's the acronym. She also serves on the board of the NGO Peace Foundation Melanesia, and is also a commissioner of the Constitutional and Law Reform Commission. Such beautiful accolades, Dr. Fiona. Welcome to our platform. You are on mute. Thank you. Thank you so much. So Dr. Fiona, in us discussing the issue on gender-sensitive legislature matters, I am interested, and so is everyone here, interested to hear what your insight is in all of this. So you do have the platform. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. Good night from Papua New Guinea. So I think I'm going to speak today to the experience of my country, Papua New Guinea. And just by way of background, we're just north of Australia, the largest island country in the Pacific, with 1/3 of the world's languages. So we've got some major challenges relating to addressing gender equality, in particular in relation to violence against women and girls, and women's leadership. So I think the CSW theme for this year is really very much relevant for our situation here in my country, in relation to ending violence against women and girls, and also women's leadership. We are one of, I think, 3 countries in the world that does not have any women at our national level parliament. So this is why gender-sensitive legislation really matters for countries like mine, and I think also in the Pacific, where we've had a history of colonization and Christianity, and of course our own cultural beliefs and views around the role of women, the role of girls, gender, and our own understanding of that word gender. And I think this is where I think gender harmony is really important, as opposed to gender equality, because we are a signatory to CEDAW. We signed that in 1995 as a country, and we've tried to domesticate some laws around especially ending violence against women and girls. So we have a Family Protection Act. There are various programs and policies in place to address ending violence against women and girls. But as many of you would know, when you do not have the voice of women at the very highest level in terms of parliament and lawmaking, it makes it quite difficult to address an agenda of gender equality. And also 80% of our population is rural. So we have quite low English language literacy rates, which means it's very hard to translate some of these definitions, some of these words such as human rights, gender equality, into local context to be able to engage with local leaders. We're a very patriarchal society, so engaging at that level is really important. And so it's about that local, global to the local context. But coming back to what I was speaking about earlier about gender-sensitive legislation, that is now really important, because when we have, and in my country, it's very, it's quite an issue, when we have a legal system that's in place that was very much introduced by colonialism, and also a system that our forefathers, our ancestors used for well before we were colonized. We have that dual kind of system of addressing issues around gender-based violence. So we've got a very strong informal court system, which really does serve the majority of our people. And so having legislation in place helps to balance, but then we also have issues around enforcement. So because some of our communities are very remote, it's quite difficult to get police out for cases. I do a lot of work around addressing sorcery accusation related violence, and that is another aspect of gender-based violence which is really quite problematic. So we've got the issue of violence against women and girls, especially intimate partner violence, then sorcery accusation related violence, which is in itself another form of gender-based violence. And the challenge for us is trying to address that at all levels. So having the laws that are there at that national level, but the implementation, and also making sure that those mainly men who are gatekeepers are able to be able to understand or get them on side in addressing this issue. So it's about the right use of language. And I agree with what Terry was saying earlier in terms of making sure that the issue is about everybody. So it's not just a women's issue, and so it's not seen as a feminist agenda and all these enlightened, Western educated Papua New Guinean women trying to advance an agenda that is not really an issue for the majority. It's about, so this is why in terms of our law, we have a Family Protection Act. So the act is talking about, and it's inclusive of men and women, parents, because elder abuse is an issue as well. And so being an inclusive act allows allows people to engage more in, as opposed to being seen as a women's law only, which is quite currently how it is being seen, the Family Protection Act, because obviously the biggest number of survivors or people who are being at the receiving end of violence within homes are women. And our domestic health survey shows that clearly. Our domestic health survey also clearly shows that there's a high level of acceptance of violence. So we're addressing this issue at all different angles. And I think I'd also like to make a point around women's leadership and the very big challenges we've had in trying to advocate for temporary special measures for women, because we know that we cannot consistently elect women into parliament for various reasons, including electoral violence, including irregularities in our electoral system. Some of the challenges that women who would like to run for parliament face include electoral finance. So we're also looking. We have national elections coming up next year, and while there's a lobby to hopefully get some legislative reform around that area, either being reserved seats for women or quotas for parties, political parties, quotas for women, there's also a lot of work being done in the background to see where we can address issues around electoral irregularities and also supporting women. As I mentioned earlier, campaign finance is a huge problem. In terms of the laws, I think in my country we have robust laws. The issue is more around enforcement, and it's also around the wider population being able to appreciate why women and girls, why gender equality matters, and for me, in my view, that the important and key, in an important way to address that is to ensure that, as I said, we have local contextual understandings of why women are just as important to men in terms of nation building. And one of the ways in which I believe we can do that is to draw upon our constitution, which it clearly speaks to equality for both men and women, and also speaks about ways in which we can accelerate women's involvement in all spheres of life, whether it be political or social. And finally, again, speaking to the issues, some of the key points of the conference, I think for my country, it is around the use of language. So gender harmony would be something that I think would be more palatable, as opposed to talking about sort of gender equality, because that in itself brings out a lot of discontent. And that's an experience that I have faced when we have talked about it, especially things like temporary special measures for women in political leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hukola. And a couple of things were mentioned that are absolutely important. And I want to point out to the justice system, with the court system, in terms of what the consequences would be if some of these acts are violated. And now, Dr. Hukola, we did have a question that was posed in the chat. It was meant for the previous speaker, but I'm going to send it off to you. Now, the question that was posed was, how can we implement into action? So there are a couple of written words when it comes to the acts, to the treaties, to what's written into the law. What's your suggestion when it comes into actual putting in the action to mitigate this issue?
I think one of the key things that we could do is address young people and youth, because when we're speaking about these issues to older people, you know, people have a very set kind of ways of thinking that's influenced by our cultural and traditional ways of thinking, by religion, Christianity, especially. And so I believe, and this is from the work that I've done with addressing sorcery accusation related violence, that young people can be a real catalyst for change if they are given the right information and also given a platform to be able to engage with their peers. I also think that strengthening the women's movement in terms of national councils, the National Council of Women, Office of Development of Women, and so the targeted kind of agencies that are mandated to work towards advancing the women's agenda is also key to making sure that some of this legislation and policy is implemented in the correct way, monitoring, all of these kinds of things to help to hold the government accountable. I think we've, and also supporting civil society to be able to do that, because a lot of our response to addressing violence against women and girls is led by civil society in terms of advocacy, but also providing services.
Absolutely. And I hope that answers the question in there. It's just strengthening everything that we already know in terms of services that are provided. Implementing action, really, it's going to start within your own family in terms of how you are showcasing those values with, you know, your own family, own children, relatives, and then it spreads out in the community, it spreads out into the whole town, the city, the nation, the county, the country, and then it becomes the world. Dr. Hukula, do you have any last minute takeaways that we can have in terms solution-wise regarding eradicating the issue?
Yes, so I think men and women working together, one of the things that we've seen in the last year, having, you know, no women in parliament is a very big issue in terms of addressing violence against women and girls, but we have managed to have male champions in our parliament, some of our governors who have made a pledge to take this agenda on board, and we have now a parliamentary committee on addressing gender-based violence. And so I think for my country, that's key, ensuring that men and women work together. And as you said, starting from the home, because that's where a lot of these values are learned. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions for Dr. Hukula? Taking a look at the chat. All right, we do not have any questions that I can see. If there are any questions, like I said, I will post them at the end of this segment. Thank you. We appreciate your time and also for sharing that information. Very important when it comes to implementing solution, also addressing that court system as well. With our speakers that we have later on, we will be talking with representatives of, of the law. So we will be talking to them, so you can ask your questions then as well. So we are going to move on with our program. And next we have, this is going to be Her Excellency Mary Simat. And Her Excellency has become a bridging figure by bringing the Maasai women with her to the decision roundtables for the land policy process and several other tribal and government-related issues. She is a United Nations consultant on violence against women and girls in Africa at the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. She served as a board member of the First Peoples Worldwide, FPW, and as a vice chair of the Board of Trustees of the National Coalition for Human Rights Defenders, UNCHRD, and that's in Kenya. The government recognizes her advocacy on behalf of the new constitution and young women's rights. She was acknowledged during the national ratification ceremonies for the Kenyan constitution and is currently an assemblywoman representing Narok County, Kenya. Your Excellency, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on here. Okay. All right, so the next, I'm going to move on to our next presenter. We will move on with the program, and we are at the point where we are going to have some conclusion statements as we have reached the first half of our program. And this is where we were discussing the gender-sensitive legislature matters and with the challenges and solutions. So we have heard Dr. Murthy talking, and we've also had with Lady Terry also coming in with CEDA, that's for the Committee of Trinidad and Tobago. We also had Dr. Fiona Hukula, and she also gave us her perspective regarding this issue. At this point, I will open it up to everyone. Does anyone have any questions? And if you do, I will allow you to go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask your question. Any questions, any comments? Does anyone have any feedback, anything you would like to share that we might not have gone over?
All right, thank you very much. My name is Isaac.
Thank you.
That's a very, very good conversation. My comment and question is, how do we bridge the gap of women leadership in positions of choices as against the opposite counterpart as men, so that we'll be able, the more women picks up the leadership roles, then of course issues of gender-based violence can also be reduced. So generally, how do we ensure that the affirmative action, women boldly picks up the position of their choices? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question, Isaac. I am going to pose this question to Dr. Hukula, Dr. Murthy, and Lady Terry. Would any one of you like to pick up on that question, please?
This is Terry. I apologize. I wasn't clear on what the question was. I heard the question, but I wasn't clear on what exactly he's asking. So maybe if he can paraphrase the question or ask it again. I'm just not clear on what it is he's asking.
Absolutely. Isaac, would you like to paraphrase?
All right. So what I wanted to comment or say is, how do we encourage women leadership positions? That women should aspire to pick their leadership position, which is of course their choices. It is for them. It is reserved. For example, in Ghana, for instance, we have 40% parliamentary membership, but you hardly get these women coming forward.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, thank you.
Contest.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's actually a very good question, and I appreciate you restating the question. So the first thing I would suggest is that these positions should not be reserved for women. I think that's sometimes it's a misconception. In countries where there are temporary special measures in place, which states that the parliament should be made up of a certain percentage, 50%, 30%, what have you. Those positions are quote unquote reserved. That doesn't make the attendee or the participant any less qualified. So that there's a lot of debate over whether even reserving those spots should even be encouraged, just because in some people's minds, it tends to diminish or the woman who will aspire or ascend to those roles. But having set that aside, your real question pertains to how to get them to be candidates in the first place. So of course, a woman is a candidate in a political party. So it starts at the political party level. We have to encourage political parties to see the value in women and how they bring value to that political party, so that they will run as an individual who is bringing this specific valuable position on your platform. But it even starts before that. It starts with us encouraging women, young girls, into young womanhood to be themselves, to understand that they have just, their agency is theirs, and their agency is theirs, and so they have the right, if they choose to take advantage of this agency, and they then should be encouraged. So what does that mean? It's by providing them support, by providing them ways in which they can training. For instance, we've done that in Trinidad and Tobago, where whether it be at the local government level or at the parliamentary level, the ministerial level, we have civil society and non-governmental organizations have offered training to women who are running for office for free. This is separate and apart from the political party that they may be representing. So encourage them on how to prepare to run a political, how to be a candidate, how to run, how to be a candidate, and how to win an election. And that is the type of engagement that is encouraged. Of course, funding is always a challenge to do that on a continual basis. But encouraging young people, so teaching civics in schools, for instance, putting civics back in schools, so young people understand the importance of what civics is and their role in being a member of society, how they can contribute in that society. And one of the ways to contribute in society is by being in politics, if that is your volition. And once you determine that that is something you want to at least try, even at the city council level, at the local government level, even at the school council level, you encourage people to do it, you support women. And then when they get into office, what we tend to do is to criticize what they do instead of supporting them. Even if they make a mistake, yes, you highlight the mistake, but then you show them how to right the mistake. What we do is throw the baby out with the bathwater. They make one mistake and you say, never again. We will never elect another woman because she has done X, Y, Z. So my point is that we need to encourage, we need to support, we need to train, we need to teach. All of these things collaboratively is what will get young people and women in taking their space in society and making the contributions that they are absolutely equipped to do. I hope that answers your question, and thanks for asking.
Thank you so much, Lady Terry, for that. And I want to add that even if you're older, regardless of what age you are, it's a mindset thing. If you believe you can, then go for it. So it's a mindset thing. You have to tell yourself that you're able to lead. You have to go ahead and get rid of any stereotypes that have been placed against women, and do not think that you are being put in that position because you're a woman. You're being put in that position because you're a leader. So let me just make that clear. You are a leader. It doesn't matter what gender you are. And we are encouraging women now because there's a lack of it in these top positions. But understand that you are a leader, not because you're a woman or a man, but because we're talking about women today, you're a leader because you were born to be a leader, and you can, and anyone can. Stereotypes, and it's a mindset thing. Okay, do we have any inputs from anyone? Do we have anyone who would like to give input on that? All right, we will then go ahead and move on. So there's a question for you, Dr. Hukula, and I'm hoping you're still here with us. And if you can hear me, here's a question. Dr. Hukula, could you please let us know what are the exact measures in place, especially in PNG, where there is a lot of cultures and traditions? Now, how receptive are the government and the traditional authorities? Let me know if you want me to repeat that question.
Thank you. So I think the government is receptive to, if I understood the question properly, it was around being receptive to traditional
Authority.
ways of, yeah. So what we have is a very large village court system, which basically uses customary law to engage with issues around, well, any issue, but of course, gender-based violence, violence against women comes a lot. Most of the cases relating to violence against women are heard at that level. There are some concerns around that because where there are cases where they're not supposed to be heard, like rape. Those are the cases that should go through the criminal justice system. They're often heard at this very local courts, mainly because they're often the first form of government contact for many people. So we have, so the government is receptive to traditional authority. I think it's just about finding the balance so that there's a line between where they can't adjudicate a case, or hear a case, and where they need to move that on to the formal system, and where they can deal with cases at the local level.
Understood. Perfect. Thank you so much for answering that question. And I know this is a main issue when we have our African leaders. There is the traditional rule, and then there is the government rule that's put in place in the law. How do those two entities work together? And thank you, Dr. Hukula, for answering that question, that they are both receptive of each other, because at the end of the day, they're dealing with the same people. So thank you so much for that.
That's right.
Absolutely. All right, we do have another question, and Gio Lester, could you please unmute and ask your question, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this program. Very enlightening. It has been mentioned that colonization and Christianity have had a role in the way women are treated nowadays. This is tradition. This is past. What has been done to change that in terms, for example, of leadership training specifically for women? What programs are in place to assist those women, those who our colleague mentioned are already in government but do not feel they have a voice or strong enough a voice or a role to allow them to speak and be heard? So again, what type of training is available for women to help them take on their leadership roles? Thank you.
That's a very important question. So we're now talking education-wise, whether it's via a curriculum in any schools or not in schools. Do we have anyone who would like to address that question and answer that? Do we have any volunteers? Yes.
Nahi, I would take a first approach to it and suggest that there is an organization, I believe it's funded through the Canadian government, Policymakers, at least for the Caribbean and the South, I should say. Policymakers is and the Interparliamentary Union, that's what it is, the IPU, the Interparliamentary Union. So Policymakers has been consistently offering training to women in parliament, all parliaments, at least in my region, the region where I live, which is the Caribbean region, to do just that, to provide that support for women once they have attained cabinet level, they're in government at some level, to participate in ongoing training, to strengthen their capacities, to build their capacities and strengthen those capacities so that they do feel comfortable raising their voices and advancing issues that impact women primarily. However, we have to also be mindful that, again, not just women, men as well. When you become a parliamentarian, you're representing a political party, unless you're an independent. And most persons who are in parliament are representing either the opposition or the government. So they're representing a political party. And it's extremely difficult when you're representing your political party to deviate from the party position. If you want to stay in government for very long. So the question should be, how do we help women find that voice within their political party, so that those agendas are included in their party position, right? So it's not so that they never, so it's not as if they're going against the party. It is advancing it's development for all of us, for their country. They're in office to develop their country. So it is, once you get in office, you don't just serve half the people, only the people who support the party that you're a part of. You're supposed to be representing all of the people, right? So from that perspective, it's helping women understand, helping leaders understand that what leadership really is. Leaders is about leading all people, not part of the people, or not only people who agree with your position. So that is something that has to be ongoing, and I really appreciate your question, because it is lacking. I will say that. I see that where there are many gaps. I see where there have been improvements just over the past 5 to 7 years. I've seen improvements in my country and in countries in my region. I've seen those improvements. I've heard the voices of women who are championing positions that would not have been championed 5 years ago. Or even 3 years ago. So I'm seeing the progress. More progress has to be made, and the only way that progress can be made is when women are supported. When they do these things, they're not isolated and actually held to a lower. Well, they're not abused because of it, because that is also an issue, and we haven't touched on that. But we can talk about the abuse of women parliamentarians, whether you're or women who are entering public life, the types of abuse that physical and psychological, that they are subject to, whether it's via the internet, or even in person when they approach persons to ask for their vote. So that's a whole different subject. So women, we have to admit that women experience some things as political leaders and in leadership that men don't. And so there are things that are unique to women, because there are people who still think women should not be in these types of positions. So because of that, they are subject to these types of discrimination. And that is why we need support. We need allies like AV and other types of organizations, men leadership, their own political parties, to stand up and support them, and to give them that, allow them to use their voice and nurture them as they advance their leadership qualities. I hope that addressed your question.
Thank you so much, Lady Terry. And I think you said Parliamerica, that was parliamentarian, correct?
Yes, Parliamericas, PARL Americas. It's an acronym.
Okay.
But if you Google IPU, or even if you Google Parliamerica, you would get a lot of information about that. It's an organization. Yes.
Okay, perfect. And thank you so much, Lady Terry, for answering that question. And for Ms. Lester, I think I can answer your question. And if anyone has any takers of answering a question on how do we then encourage our young girls when it comes to everything that we're talking about, really, and for them understanding the law. Ms. Lester, I want to tell you that there are different organizations. So you have the Junior Achievement, and they are in almost every country, from what I know. You have the Junior Achievement. The United Nations has program for young kids as well that they implement in different schools. So now this is going to be, what does the school has to offer? what does, in terms of clubs, associations, and organizations, then participating in these different organizations at an early age. It could be the leader of a chess club, it could be the captain of a netball team, whatever it is, anything that they do in that stage shows them leadership skills, leadership qualities that they can then talk about whether they are in an interview, but that's a leadership quality that they have. It's encouraging from the get-go. Even when you're in kindergarten, I was in charge of making this particular group of girls draw this picture of a tree. Okay, so it starts also from the family. It starts within, localizing that within the family. How are you encouraging your own children or children that you're a guardian of in terms of taking stance, making decisions? Simple things like, how are we going to do the grocery list? Give them that responsibility. That's teaching them strategy. You have you have $50. We need to space this out in 2 weeks. You have 14 days in a week, create this plan. There are so many things that are not written down, but that you can implement as in your own family, that I do with my own child. My child is right here. He's been recording me since 8:30 a.m. He's really mad at me because I woke him up early, but he's standing right here. So it's different things that you can help them navigate an interview with any big company, be it Bloomberg, Google, anything in Silicon Valley, anywhere in the world. You can use simple things that you do in the house to showcase a skill. All right. Any questions before we move on to our next segment? And Ms. Lester, I hope that answers your question. And go ahead. I see you can go ahead and speak. I see you have your hand up.
I was applauding what you said, both of you said. Thank you so very much. That's exactly what I was looking for, because we women are raised to be the nurturers, the caretakers, the ones who support our men while they climb the ladder. But rarely a hand is extended back down to us to bring us up. So we need to create our own ladders, and we need to teach young women the importance of recognizing their own value so they can create their space, claim their space in society. Thank you so very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. If you have any children, nieces and nephews, start making those children bosses as of today, courtesy of this program, okay? Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. We are going to go to our next segment, and we are on time, and we are going to be talking about the supremacy of constitutions. So what are the challenges and solutions with that? And to start off this segment, we have Ambassador Henry McDonald. Now, with Ambassador Henry McDonald, he is extraordinary plenipotentiary, was the permanent representative of Suriname to the United Nations for almost a decade, and elected chair of the third committee, social, humanitarian, and cultural. Prior to that, he has served in various capacities to represent Suriname's embassy to the United States. He is a lawyer and currently serves as the president of the World Development Foundation and as a senior advisor to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, International Business, and International Cooperation of the President of Suriname ever since. So thank you so much, Honorable Henry McDonald. We are glad to have you on here. You're on mute, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning, and thank you very much for the kind introduction. First of all, let me thank you for the fact that I was invited to speak today at this virtual conference, and certainly I need to thank Mr. Wale, a very good friend of mine when I was in New York. So today I will I was asked to talk about why gender-sensitive legislation matters. And I said that I will do that, but I will also concentrate at the second part of my statement on a very important issue that Suriname is confronted with, and that is femicide. Let me start with Article 35 of the Constitution of Suriname, that evidently stipulates that family is recognized and protected by the law, by the Constitution, of course. Husband and wife are equal before the law. Every child, that means boys and girls, shall have the right to protection without any form of discrimination. Parents shall have the same responsibilities towards legitimate and natural children. The state recognizes the extraordinary value of motherhood. Working women shall be entitled to paid maternity leave. Suriname has ratified the Convention to End Discrimination Against Women and is doing its utmost to abide to the various stipulations of this very important human rights instrument. Suriname also ratified the Treaty on Equal Remuneration in 2016. Furthermore, during the past decennium, Suriname has also passed several local laws to protect the safety of women, such as the law against harassment. An act to protect women was passed in 2009, and currently, as we speak, a sexual harassment act to protect women and men at the work floor is similarly under the consideration of the Parliament. Subsequently, because of this all, I would like to take the opportunity to compliment and applaud the government for its clear gender-sensitive approach that is being expressed in the Constitution as well as several local laws. And I can say also that obviously more needs to be done, particularly regarding the safety of women in general, and specifically the safety of their lives. As I said before, a huge problem presently in Suriname is femicide. Let me start by saying that a recent report by a number of international organizations revealed that 7 out of 10 countries with the highest female murder rate in the world are in Latin America. Led by El Salvador, Colombia, Honduras, Brazil, and a few other countries, Suriname is also in the top 10 of the world. While general violence levels and domestic abuse are considered to be the main contributors to high femicide rates in Latin America, organized crime, prostitution, gang violence, and trafficking in persons also play a huge role in the murder and slaughtering of women in Latin America. An interesting phenomena at the top of this global femicide listing is that none of the before mentioned reasons apply for Suriname. So when you look at Suriname, gang violence is not a problem. Trafficking in persons is not a problem. Prostitution, women doesn't die because of prostitution. And also organized crime is not one of the reasons for this high femicide number in Suriname. In Suriname, women, and particularly young women and mothers, are mainly murdered by their husband, their men, or their boyfriends. This means that femicide in Suriname is solely linked to domestic abuse. In judicial terms, we call it crimes of passion. And I particularly see it as a crime related to the abuse of power of one human being over another, often a man over a woman. This matter has been catastrophic over the last decade, since the statistical numbers are still climbing. In 2017, for instance, 50% of all murder cases in Suriname were linked to femicide. And since then, I haven't seen a sharp decline. In fact, just this week, the Honorable Speaker of the House visited the funeral of yet again another young mother of two, where he expressed his dismay about femicide in Suriname and called for the stop of the senseless violence against women. I can tell you that many has asked me if I know other countries in a similar situation so that we can learn from them. My answer is, and always has been, that since we are in the top 10, and the principal 4 reasons for all other countries to find themselves in the top doesn't count for Suriname, we will have to find a solution by ourselves. Obviously, we should also look legally for a resolution or for resolutions, but what should not be underestimated is to raise more awareness among boys and men. We will have to find reasons for boys and men to also become guardians of women's rights in all aspects. And in Suriname, we should find a way to show the world how men and boys can join women in the struggle to stop the abuse of women completely and how to control femicide. One of the speakers before has been listening since I think it was 9 o'clock this morning. One of the speakers, she mentioned that when a woman is killed, for instance, not only women are being affected. I can assure you that men, boys are being affected equally or as well. So my personal belief is that we should have more men joining this struggle. And just looking at this panel, I see, I think, 3 men, including Wale, who are following these discussions. I've been in the United Nations for 10 years, and I can tell you as CSW, we have almost more than 2,000 representatives from countries in New York. And when you enter a room, any discussion, you'll see that maybe 10% of the audience consists of men. And those men are usually the camera guys, the guys who bring coffee and share documents. And it's more like an almost completely women's space. And that's why, while I was in New York, Wale knows about it, Suriname and Iceland organized 2 barbershop conferences. We call it barbershop conferences because a barbershop is mainly in Suriname a male-dominated space, where we focus on inviting the male ambassadors and the male diplomats to, to talk about issues like gender equality, gender harmony, violence against women, etc., etc. But with that, I would like to stop. I think I spoke for 10 minutes already. And if there are questions, I would like to, see what I can say about them. Thank you so much for your listening, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Sir Henry McDonald. Thank you so much for that insight. And I want to echo what you said. And this is certainly something that we can do in our next program is if we were talking about violence against women, we need to have an equal number of share in terms of who is participating in this program. So that goes by the law and also with the gender that's present. So this is feedback for you, Dr. Wale, not me, but make sure we have more men in our next presentation. But that's very good feedback, because then both sides can hear exactly where we're trying to go, and it's better to hear it in one setting, just so that we don't have information filtered as it goes on to the top. Thank you so much for that, and also sharing the statistics in terms of the violence that are being, with the domestic violence that's occurring. Now, do we have any questions for His Honor? Any questions? So I do have a question for you, sir. Now, my question is, statistically speaking, with all these violent acts that are being acted on, why is it that because we have so many acts and treaties and laws put in place, why are they still occurring then? Why do we not have a decrease to that? And what is the law doing about that? I just want to hear your opinion on that. if we have so many laws, acts, and treaties, shouldn't we be seeing a decline? When you take a look at the graph, shouldn't we be seeing a decline in terms of violent acts that are done? Is there some sort of roadblock when it comes to the law in terms of how people are held accountable for the actions that are being done? Is that why we still see it's either going to be like a stagnant line? When you take a look at the graph, acts are still being performed violently, or they are increasing. Why is it that we're not seeing a decrease? And this is really for the entire world.
Yeah, you're right. I fully agree. Just if you look at Suriname, you'll see that we have ratified all major conventions. In the country, we have also passed many laws. I think approximately 40% of the members in parliament are women. So we are doing quite well with regard to the ratification of laws and of international conventions and the passing of laws to protect women. The problem, if you ask me, is, I see it more in awareness raising about men and boys. I believe that men and boys should understand that an issue like violence against women is a human rights issue. It's not just a women's issue, it's a human rights issue. And why I believe that, the reason why I believe that men can need to join and can do a lot is because I'm a man myself. And I believe, I know that the persons who, in fact, I love the most, okay, my mom passed away, but many boys, many men are mama's boys. So we love mom. We love our sisters. We all love our female family members. But yeah, the way I want to put it is that many of us doesn't realize that women, that when something has happened to, for instance, our female neighbor, that same issue can happen to us as well. It can happen to our mother, to our sister. But unless it happened to one of them, it doesn't concern us. If something happened to my female neighbor, usually men don't worry about it because there should be a reason why it is happening, why she's being abused. But if your mom is being abused, or if your daughter is being abused, or if your sister is being abused, that's a totally other struggle. So usually when I talk to men in my awareness raising campaigns, I tell them that, look, internationally, 7 out of 10 women will be confronted with violence in their life. That is, the research is there, UN Women has. 7 in 10 women will be confronted with violence in their life internationally. But then I explain to the guys, when I'm talking about 7 in 10 women, I don't mean 7 in 10 women at the bus stop right now who are working at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or somewhere else. I'm talking about if you introduce 10 of your family members, your female family members to me, 7 of them are being or will be abused. And then you can see them become quiet, and then they start to understand the situation. Because as we men, we never talk about violence against women. We don't talk about it, but it's happening. And somebody needs to tell guys that they have something to do as well. And that's why I think that more men need to join this struggle so that we can explain the seriousness to it to other men, because men tend to listen to other men too. Usually you'll see that men don't come to this audience because they simply will say that this is a women's issue, just give the women their space to talk, and but they should understand that it's their issue as well. And I think that's, to come back to your question, awareness raising and to bring more men into this entire struggle is important, so that, because men are the perpetrators, but many of them don't talk about the issues.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Ladies, any input on that? Because I don't know if any one of you realize this, but this is very important, very important. We are in this platform, in this program that I'm hosting, and 99% of people in this program are women. We are talking about issues that occur to us. And we are coming up with all these suggestions, all these ideas of how to mitigate this problem. But what's going to happen after this program? Is this going to go ahead and solve what the issue is? Right? I don't know if I'm the only one who's seen what the underlying issue is here, but there is more that we need to do as women. I agree. And that's to speak up. There is more that needs to be addressed too with whoever, and I don't care if it's a man or a woman, who the police, the law, the judges, the court system, the government, the traditional leaders, that is convoluted. Higher percentage of that, I'm going to say this, and I might be wrong in my statistics, but I want to say over 90% are male, and they are not in this platform right now. It's going to lie down on us. What are we going to do as ladies? Now, I keep on saying that we need to localize this. It has to be families. It has to be families. It has to be families. What about those people that do not have families? What is the community doing? You see where I'm building up on? This needs to be this needs to be addressed in a different way if this is going to be solved. So I really want to hear your input. I know all the ladies in this platform have something to say. Say it. This goes also with the fact that you should not be afraid to say what you think. Nothing is a bad question. Nothing is a bad idea. Forgive me if I'm being too passionate. As a host, I'm supposed to maintain all this coolness with me, but no, okay? If you're passionate about something, say it in the chat. Let's speak on it. Let's act on it. All right, so we do have a question. Let me get back in my hostess mood. We do have a question, ladies and gentlemen. So let me start. Dr. Murthy, can I have your opinion, please? Do you have an opinion or any feedback that you have in terms of what we're talking about? And I will come to you, Letumusa Kubule. I will come to you after this, but Dr. Murthy.
Yes, could you please repeat that question?
Okay.
What, yeah.
Okay, so my question, are you referring to the question that
no, the one with which you wanted my opinion, because I just was away from my computer for just a minute because I needed to attend anything. As women, we all multitask, right?
That is so true.
Yeah, so could I please request you, Madam Moderator, to just ask me that question again?
I certainly can. So here's my question, and I'm basing this off of what Mr. McDonald just spoke about in terms of statistically. So Dr. Muti, you see that this conversation that we're having now, it's mostly women. The issue that we're addressing is mostly men. My question to you is, how do we then put action for this issue to be eradicated? What is it that we need to do as women? What do men need to do? Let me rephrase my question like that, and I hope it's...
Yeah, great. I got it. Thank you. First of all, I think we all, Ambassador McDonald has been an amazing champion for gender equity. And he is the one who has actually worked to start the He for She when he was a United Nations ambassador. The He for She campaign is what His Excellency Ambassador McDonald really, was instrumental, which was launched by the Secretary General a couple of years ago. And some of us had the honor of being there. So this is, it's a pledge for men to sign that they will work with women to stop violence. So he's standing for she. So I think when we address this, we need men like Ambassador McDonald, Wale, and other men who work with women who understand that. Because as Ambassador McDonald said in his remarks, and all the other eloquent speakers, this is not a male issue. This goes beyond gender. It is an evil in society. So it's unfortunately the prevalence is more against women, but as we have said, it's not that men are immune. But long story short, to come to the point, we all need to work together, and we need men to work with us. So I think this is what we need to do, and it's forums like these which make beginnings. And Ambassador McDonald has really been amazing and right at the forefront, like in his current role now. And when he was UN ambassador, he was one of the most, I would say, beloved and very easily accessible ambassadors by the NGOs, but also he put his words into action. And for me, it's a personal privilege to share this podium with Ambassador McDonald and also with Lady Terry, because I've known Terry for a long time. And, everybody like Terry also has been working behind the scenes, on the ground, as all our other people are, because we believe in this. That's why it doesn't matter. It's Sunday, it's midnight, it's rain, it's shine. We are all called there because what you're doing here is a call for action. But at the same time, it's just not waving a placard. It's a call for action with tangible processes in place. I'm a person of science. I believe in tangible processes. So which is what I think is the outcome of this. So I hope I've been able to answer your question. So as what he says, it's a call for action. All of us, we can do whatever we can, even have a 1-minute elevator pitch. Because as I said earlier in my remarks, if you help women, you're helping the whole society. It's just not a woman. And again, it's in gender harmony. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that input, Dr. Moti. And you stated it clearly. This is all about gender harmony. So thank you so much for giving us that input. I'm going to move on. I do have a comment that I'm seeing in here from Letumusa Kulube. And you mentioned a very good point in the chat. I want to ask, if you can you unmute and explain that to everyone?
Sure, I'm happy to unmute. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the platform. Thank you to the lady that invited me, Gabriela Chavez Mendes. I'm happy to be here. Thank you. I think just to expand on it, in my country, I can't speak for other countries because I think it's a bit tricky. We have a history of a culture where women have to be subservient, submissive to men, and I mean it's actually something that is groomed from when we are quite young, quite small, right? We're always trained to take care of our fathers, take care of our brothers, although what they can be doing is wrong, we still have to care for them and that. And I see that playing itself out as we grow, right? In the context of if a woman wants to make a decision, a man always feels that because of the culture and because of the history, he has a right, he has the power to even abuse so that a woman can actually do what he wants. We've seen at times where if a woman wants to leave, she can't leave unless he says that you must leave. And if she chooses to leave, then she's going to lose her life. And it sounds quite offish, but those are things that quite honestly happen, right? You have a woman that's stuck in a unhappy marriage or in an unhappy family because a woman's role is lower in that man's mind, and that's how he's been groomed. And the cultural context plays such a major, because you find that these men aren't just doing it alone. They are often they are often helped, or they're often also encouraged by their mothers, by their sisters, right, and by their aunts. And that's not to say that it's wrong. That's just how they've been groomed for all these years. So in challenging this now, I'm just wondering, is there a way that we can also start to tackle the cultural context too, that is so that is so far in that you almost have to not take it at a policy level only, but you almost want to take a more consultative way about it. And that's just what I wanted to ask. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And you are bringing a very important issue. And I think the elephant in the room, I like what you said about grooming, because as us, I'm going to speak for us women, right? For us women, we tend to do that for some of us, to groom our children into believing that something is okay when it's not. This is what you need to do. This is something that you need to do to respect this man or respect this woman. And sometimes it's very toxic. You're mentioning a good point in terms of how we need to sometimes, and this is what Miss Lester was also saying, that sometimes we need to nip this problem from a very young age. And it's all about this whole grooming thing, that you grow up thinking that something is okay until you start finding your own voice. Do we have any of the speakers or any of the leaders address any questions that she heard? Because she did mention good points. Some of these issues are starting from an early age and we're growing into them. So now we're going back as a group trying to, or attempting to make amends with this young generation that's before us, because now in this platform, now we have seen the light, now we're enlightened, now we know exactly what needs to be done. So do I have any comments for any of the leaders? Very amazing points. Thank you so much. And I need to mention that her country is right next to my country. Shout out to South Africa. Thank you. All right, so do we have any comments, please? Like I said, ladies, this is our platform. Speak up. And also for the gentlemen that are in here, unmute, or else I will unmute you. We need to talk. I will pick anybody. I can do this. I can see everybody. This will be like a Jeopardy session. So who wants to talk? So you're making it all difficult for me. Dr. Remy, I know you are there, Dr. Remy. Okay, she's unmuted. She's on mute. I had somebody speak. That's Isaac. Please go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. One of the issues I would like to comment about is what really brings about this violence, and that has become deepened in our cultural setting. I believe to deal with it head on is to begin to see unpaid work into policy formulations, because most women are the subject of unpaid work and they are the homes. And many often this unpaid work brings about these conflicts and harassment and what have you. So what are these speakers going to say about unpaid care work at home? And is it time for us to begin putting it into policies? Thank you.
Absolutely. So as a matter of, is it time for us to put it into policies? Nothing is ever too late to implement into policies, because we have to take, like what Mr. McDonald said, this is a human rights thing. Somebody's getting hurt. So there should never be a time frame in terms of what something is established into policy. Do I have any comments on that, please, from anyone else?
So Tinashe, I will expand on that. I appreciate Isaac raising that comment. Unpaid work is something that we have been talking about in this women's space for some time. Domestic workers, unpaid care work, I'm sorry. But what we've seen during COVID, obviously, is that type of work has expanded, right? So whereas women who were always doing that work, now they have to do it even more because in addition to taking care of the home, taking care of maybe elderly parents or aging relatives, etc., they now have to homeschool children, which is something that they weren't doing or they may not have been doing previously. So in addition to their jobs, they now have 4 other jobs that they're not compensated for. And how are we bringing that to the attention and at least giving it the proper attention? That is not to say that women want to get paid for everything they do. What I am saying is recognizing the value of the contributions that are being made by women, including care work and the value of care work. We all have, many of us have aging or older relatives that we contribute to or take care of in one way or the other. And how are we recognizing that in the whole scheme of how much the amount of work that's done by women? So I appreciate Isaac raising that point, and raising it is the first. So his question is, how do you address it? Raising it is the first step, right? And acknowledging that it is real, that it has to be addressed, and now we all determine how it's going to be addressed. But the first thing we have to do is acknowledging that it's there and it should be addressed. So thank you for that. So that's my contribution.
Thank you so much, Lady Terry, for that. And it is really vital, as you can see, when it comes to issues like this, that they need to be nipped in the bud from an early age. And it's not too late. We keep on saying an early age. This is something that can also be improved regardless of what age you are. Things can be improved at any time, right? And you can make a difference. Either you're making a difference in yourself, or you're making a difference for your generation or for your community, or for whatever organization that you are in. But you, as long as you have the voice, you can project that voice to different people around you, within your family, outside your family. It doesn't matter if you just help one person, that person is going to help other people. It's kind of like a tree diagram. All right. Thank you so much for providing us with that input. We are going to move on with our program.